Good morning. We continue to think about these covenants. Yesterday we were thinking about the covenant that God made through Moses with the children of Israel, the rules and regulations he gave them. But then finally, these 12 tribes crossed the Jordan under Joshua and invaded Canaan and came back into the land that God had promised to them through Abram. He said, "This will be your land. There will be times when you'll be taken away from it, but you'll always come back to it." And just as a present day aside, that is exactly what is happening at the present day. The children of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, through Isaac and Jacob, are again establishing a nation on that part of the world, the nation of Israel. But let's go back to the children of Israel crossing on this first occasion. They came in and they conquered the land. And then finally, through Samuel, they were appointed a king. First of all, Saul, and then David. And God once again makes another covenant, and this is with David. David, as he sat in Jerusalem in his capital, decides he wants to build a temple for God. And he sends for Nathan the prophet, and he says to him, "I want to build a temple." And Nathan must have thought, this is a wonderful idea. He says, "Yes, go ahead." And then he goes home. But that very night, we're told, that very night, Nathan is woken up by God and said, "Go back and tell David, I do not want him to build my temple. He can prepare for it. He can get ready for it. He can train Solomon as to how it should be. But he is not to build it. He is a man of blood. He is a warrior. It's not his job to build my temple." When Nathan told David this, he must have been very depressed. Couldn't understand what was happening. Then as he prayed, God spoke to him again. And here we come to this new covenant. Because God said to David, "You may not going to be able to build my temple, but I'm going to make a new covenant with you. Your kingdom will never, ever come to an end. You will personally die physically, and your descendants will die. But the kingdom that you have established will never come to an end. I'm going to put somebody on your throne, and that king will live forever, and your kingdom will be established." See, Saul's kingdom, the previous king, had come to an end. But this was a strange promise, a promise made to David. The people caught hold of this vision, and they thought this is going to be a wonderful dynasty. And when Solomon came to the throne, he built the temple. And people said, this is it. The dynasty has been established. The covenant has been established. And you read, you can see king after king coming as one died and the other succeeded him. The same dynasty was going on. But when we come dealing with God, we have sometimes got to be careful, because sometimes God is doing something we're not expecting. Because God was not going to establish the dynasty through Solomon. He was going to establish it in a different way. Solomon had another brother, a younger brother, and that brother's name was Nathan. You may not hear about him very much. He comes and disappears in the scriptures, hardly ever mentioned. But Solomon had another brother called Nathan. And if you go to Nathan and follow his genealogy, generation after generation after generation, you suddenly find that he comes to a man who has a daughter, and the daughter's name was Mary. And Mary was the mother of the Messiah. Mary was the mother of the Messiah. Here was the person that God was talking about. He was talking about Jesus, who would be a descendant of David, who would come into this world and would be established as king. This is what God had been talking about as he was speaking to David. See, sometimes we can hear God's covenants and we can misinterpret them. We can misunderstand them. But when God makes a covenant promise, the covenant promise holds. And tomorrow we're going to be looking at this covenant promise to David and what it actually meant for the people of his own day and the generations that followed David, and what it means for us as well. Amen.